Right, great. Yeah, thanks for everyone participating. It's a mixture of all right and can't wait. So yeah, thank you. Let me just close this. Okay, so let me just move on to the next slide. That was too fast. Yeah, so just briefly about me. My name is Samuel Sentongo. My role sees me as senior security engineer at Atlassian. If you haven't heard of Atlassian, we do products like Confluence, Jira, and Trello. We have a couple of products all over the world, and it's in Australia, and I've been here for about 1 year. So how I describe my role, I say my role sees me act as a marriage counselor between security engineers and developers. I work with developers all the day, and I love working with developers as well, helping them build more secure products at Atlassian. If there's anything you have or any questions, feel free to raise your hand. But yeah, just move forward with that. This is just a brief picture of just some information about me and what you learn about me. And I can go through this quickly. I can say, yeah, this is me in even high school, sorry. This is primary school when I was still a young child. Traveling is one of my passions. I've been traveling for about just since I was born, really. I've always had a wandering spirit. And this was one of the competitions I participated in. So in case you didn't know, the fun fact, lived and studied in Malaysia for about 5 years. So that was a big part of my upbringing and also my studies for university. And I tend to get in other activities involved as well. So if this is me building a terrarium, it's something I've never done before, but I actually interested and loved. So just to give you an idea of who I am and put a face and a presence to what I'm speaking about. Now you may ask yourself like, hey, what's this talk about and what are we going to talk about? Well, when I thought of this, I wanted to speak to the person who is just starting out in their career. So not starting out, but has joined an organization and they're trying to figure out, well, what's my contribution here? What's my place and how do I do my best work and contribute to the organization, but also be present as well. So this will be this talk for you, and hopefully you can get some ideas and learn some lessons from this. The outline will be as follows. First one will be talking about, I'm just happy to be here. We'll define what that is and how you feel that when you enter an organization. And the second bit will be, what are the stories, what stories are you telling? So I'll be talking about like, what are the stories you keep telling yourself and how do you brand yourself within an organization? Please note, an organization could be anything. It could be a startup, it could be a big company, it could be even a consultancy. So it is anywhere where you feel you're part of something and you're working towards something. And then the last section will be a wrap up. Yeah, but before we start, some general housekeeping. If there's anything you want to know about this topic or about me before we start, please put in the chat and I'll check it quickly as well. Other thing as well, these thoughts are mine only and don't represent the views of my employers, future, past, and present. So all this to say is that these thoughts are mine. It's all carried from my experiences, but everyone's experience is different. I just are here to share with you my knowledge and what I've learned so far. Yeah, before we start, just to keep everyone engaged, I wanted to do an icebreaker. So go and play a game of one truth, one lie. Just going to give you a brief story about my travels, and then I'll let you have to tell what's the truth and what's the lie. Yeah, so I grew up in Uganda, and then I moved to Malaysia to do my studies. And after Malaysia, I decided to come down to Australia to work here. Now, on my way to Australia, I decided to have a quick detour and I visited a country called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is actually North Korea. And then I came to Australia. When I came to Australia, I actually joined, I, I joined a local swimming team and I became part of the swimming team. And as a result, I almost became an Olympian. So the question here is, what is the truth and what is the lie? I'm going to share with you a poll and then you get to make that decision. So is the truth or lie that I visited the North Korea or that I participated in the swimming slash salsa dancing championships? Ah, even. Okay, great. But yeah, well, in the interest of time, yeah, the truth is yes, I did actually visit the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and no, I haven't participated in the salsa dancing championships yet, but one day. Yeah, so this will be the first section of I'm just happy to be here. I want you to just imagine that, hey, you've always had this coveted dream job. So you've had this dream job you've always wanted to be. Maybe you're seeing yourself working in insert any fang or even Atlassian for it, and you do all the interviews, go through the grueling process, or you do an internship and finally get that offer. And then I'm going to give you an idea of what day one is. Now, some of you may have experienced this before, but I'm just going to share with you my experience of how I went through this. So yeah, so you have day one. Now you have day one, which is onboarding. And what you see by this, I liken it to they give you a treasure map and they say, this is the organization and this is what we do. And we want you to make your own adventure and discover a few things. Now, when you look at this on day one, you'll be like, oh my God, there's so much work to do. How can I all do this? And there's so much impact. But at the same time, you want to have an impact in the organization. So you start by being helpful and speaking to different people, but just give you an idea of how overwhelming and sometimes even big the impact can be. Now, as to this page, so you've started on day one, now you go through day one and you're doing everything, and then just within a flash, day 30 comes. Day 30 comes and means you've just spent 1 month at your organization and you think to yourself, oh my God, how did I spend where did the 30 days go? Where did the 4 weeks go? Now you might think to yourself, oh, this, I'm starting to panic. And that's how I felt in some organizations because I felt that I was still finding my feet, still trying to make an impact, still trying to know who is who in the organization. And depending on the size, you might even not have met everyone that you like to meet. But then you might have thought to yourself, well, how do I make an impact within my team? How do I get noticed or even have? Well, some of the ideas that came to me was like imitation. So it came to myself, well, yeah, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So what I came to an idea was, why don't I find the high performing individuals in the team and compete in quotes or set them as the benchmark? So what I mean is that if you, let's say, work in a team of four and there's this, let's say, rock star programmer, and they say, oh, he knows, he does all the code reviews, he makes all the factoring changes, he codes in this, he codes in that. You start thinking to yourself, well, like, how can I be like this person? How can I be the best version of this person? And how can I even get their attention? Because if I'm almost as good as them, then maybe I'll also become better in a way. But you have to think about the pros and cons to this. And you have to think about, well, the pros are pretty obvious. If you've set them as a standard, if you work within a high performance team, that means you always rise to their level. You'll also learn a lot along the way. And you'll even gain the respect of the peers and people around you. And what about the cons? What do you think the cons are? If you think about it, you think about there's a reason why this person is a very good or excellent programmer or software engineer. They have all these experiences they've had before, and that has led them to this level. And the experiences they have might not necessarily be the same experiences you've had. So while they're focused on being the best version of you, you should also focus on being the best version of you. Only you can be the best version. And the reason is that you have your own unique experiences and viewpoints that might lend to the organization. And something I always have to say with everyone when they join an organization is that there's a reason they hired you. So they brought you on for this particular set of skills and they see the potential in you. So it's up to you to live to your best potential. So this is something I personally struggled with. And I asked myself, well, what does it take to be me? What does it take for Sam myself to rise to this level and elevate myself? And I'd ask my questions like this on and on again to say, well, if I, instead of being the best version, instead of trying to imitate and emulate the top performing people in my organization, how can I become the best version of me? And in that context, become one of the top people, or not one of the top people, I'd say, but one of the high performing individuals. And things I asked myself was, what are the commitments I have to make in order to reach that level? And what are the agreements you have to make with yourself? Now, some of these commitments might be, okay, fine, I have to learn a new language, a new programming language, or I might have to take on some extra tasks. So maybe to learn like a new language, or I might have to take on a mentor and listen to different people. But this is something you have to decide on yourself because only you know what it takes to be you and what it takes to be great. One of the quotes that is misattributed to Albert Einstein, although they say that's not true, is insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Some of you might have experienced this in different organizations you go. You might go and work in this some organization and you apply the same methods or the same way of doing things that you've done in the previous organization, and you think they'll immediately transfer over. So what I'm trying to convey with this point is that the skills and the abilities that got you to this level are not necessarily the same skills and the abilities that get you to the next level. So if you start out, let's say, as a, for argument's sake, as a senior engineer or even as a junior engineer, and you have to move to the next level, you might have to start thinking more and say, well, these are the skills that are here, but how do I get to the next level and what does the next level look like? And this might be having an impact not only within your team, but across other teams. And this might require you to learn like empathy and build new things. This might require you to think about architecture and design and how that impacts the way you're programming. This might you to think within the team, how do you increase team spirit and team morale? So that's something you have to think and always be ready to, in order to move to the next level, there'll be certain things that will be required of you and you might not have to perform the same way. Now, one of the things I discovered as well was I had to go through this process of discovering myself. And what does discovery mean to me? I had asked myself, well, Sam, what is important to you and what are the things that you want to build on to have a career? Because you have to think of your job as a career. So you have to think about it in terms of everything you do. How does it focus? How does it help either improve your career or get where you want to be at the next level? Now, I'll be frank with you, getting into the crux of it was also hard as well, because you have to, it requires a lot of self-reflection and being honest with yourself and saying, well, these are some of the things that I don't like doing, and these are some of the things that I like doing and enjoying time with. As an example, I like teamwork. I like working with my team. I like working on big picture ideas and solving things necessarily in terms of the code and going deep into the code. That's not something I enjoy. There's some other people who enjoy this in my team better than me, but in terms of thinking of architecture and design decisions, that's something I get excited by. So once you figure out what's your path and your path is not the only path and it's not for everyone, then it will be, I aspire you to be the way to move forward. Excuse me, sorry. Now I'm going to talk about watering the roots. What does watering the roots mean? Watering the roots essentially means talking about figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are. Now, some of the exercises I've done as well, this is something I encourage people to do, is speak to your friends, speak to your loved ones, speak to your parents, speak to your family, speak to your colleagues, and ask them, hey, what is the one thing you'd come to me for? What is one particular skill you'd come to me for if needed my help? And then also ask them the opposite. What is the last skill you'd come to me for if you needed my help and as the last person in the world? Now, once you gather feedback from different people, you'll be able to pick up themes around what are the important things that people see in you and how do they value your contribution to them. Now, you might see different themes that say, okay, fine, we appreciate the way you look at code and factor in code and make all these changes, or we appreciate the way you teach to us concepts and explain to us, or we appreciate the way you have detail, so you have an eye for detail and make sure everything's done correctly. You keep on seeing different things in your work and different things from the feedback, and that's something you can improve. Now, what I'm showing in this illustration is that I am a huge proponent of working on your strengths and focusing on them, because once you focus on your strengths and all of them, there's a big potential for it to get much bigger than focusing on your weaknesses. If you address your weaknesses, they can only be, in my opinion, done until a certain extent, and you can taper over them. But when you focus on your strength, sky's the limit. So if it's something you love doing, as an example, if you like breaking down concepts into simpler things and teach them to everyone, you can sort of become like this teacher in your organization who explains everything in simple concepts, and you become like an evangelist. And the sky is the limit for you there. If you're someone who likes going deep in the code and factoring things and figuring things out and coming up with new ways, then going down that lane and enjoying that is the sky is the limit, rather than focusing on your weaknesses, which might not necessarily bring you joy, and also the upside is not as high. Yes. And that's something I did personally. So when I did that stuff, I asked friends, what do they think? And they liked that I was a motivator, and they liked me when I talk to them, I was always excited for the future. So I was excited for their future and my future. I was excited for the potential of the things they could do and the things they could be. And they found that me acting as a springboard or giving them that necessary motivation to move forward was what they needed. So that's something I find I like in my organization. I like speaking about strategy. I like speaking about the big picture. I like designing things and thinking about what is the future for my team, how does this future look like, and building that future for them. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is what stories do you keep on telling yourselves? Stories are important to us, and why I talk about stories is that stories define who you are, and it's important to tell a story that defines you and also is your brand. You have to keep on remember that you're in an organization, and the organization is made of who? Organization is made of people. Yes, there's a system, and the system operates in a certain way, but the organization has people. And if there are stories you're telling yourself and the stories you're telling different people, this will allow you to get to the level that you want to be and where you want to be for. So why do I think this is important? I think this is important because this will give you the opportunity and open for you rooms you want to be, give you opportunity and also get you access to opportunity you never had before. So you may ask yourself questions like, what do you want to be remembered for in this organization? Why should you be remembered for in this organization? And you have to keep on in the context of in this remote fast era, especially why even right now I'm doing this presentation in front of you people, in front of you folks. And yeah, it's a remote fast era. It's important to tell these stories that uplift yourself and not only get you out there, but will also get your brand going. Now, these stories will form part of your brand narrative, and it's important that once it's a strong narrative, people want to be part of this journey, and people be engaged. Stories bring engaging. Stories bring a sense of hope, I would say. Now, I can give examples of my background. When I started, I thought when I started in different organizations, I thought myself, hey, I'm not capable of leading. I'm not a leader. I'm not someone who's assertive. I'm not someone who can speak. The stories I would tell myself is that has already been done. Why should I work on this? There's so many people are much smarter than me. Why am I even here? But then I had to change my mindset and think about, I have something to say. I have something to improve. And also ask my managers and my teammates around me, how can I be of service? So once you change that story to saying, I want to be of service, I want to be of help, and increasing, changing your narrative, then you find that everyone will be around you trying to help and be as helpful as possible. And you might ask yourself, well, Sam, how do I do this? Like, how do I change my own story? How do I even tell my own stories in an organization? Something I like talking about and something I like talking about is self-advocacy. So what does this mean? This means advocating for yourself. Now, I know that to different people, this might sound something foreign, or why should I advocate for myself? Should my manager advocate for me? Or why don't you wait until it's your turn and then you do something? Um, yes, to each his own, but I'm a fan of advocating for yourself and getting your brand name out, whether in the organization, even outside your brand, even outside the organization. You always have to remember that you have a story to tell and you have a voice, and this is important for you. And the more you discover your voice, the more you feel that you're celebrated in your organization, and you feel that you're actually contributing to something. Now, some of the things I've done is I leaned into the things I discovered about myself, and I've had conversations with my manager and team. So I talked about them and said, hey, this is something, this is how I see myself contributing within the context of our team and the organization. And what did this lead to? This led to opportunities that allowed me to exhibit some of those strengths as well. And one thing I always have to remind people is you don't have to do this alone. You have teammates, mentors, managers who can do the advocating for you as well. So always spread the word and just give examples. Like when I joined this organization, I said, hey, I want to have an impact, not just within my team, but also work across different teams as well. And this led me to different opportunities whereby I was able to sit in other meetings with other organizations and have that ability to learn. Yeah, well, now that you're coming closer to that, you might ask yourself, well, how do I do all this? Like, this sounds like hard work, and how do I even get here? Well, I'm here to share with you the secrets of the trade, and also call them accelerators for growth. So, these are some of the things that I did not get me to the next level, and some of the conversations I had, and also self-reflection as well. The first thing I did was I took a step back and asked myself, what are the best roles for me in the organization, and where do I see myself participating? You have to think about this being in an organization as let's say playing in a team. Now, in a team, everyone has different positions. I can give an analogy of soccer or football, as they called. Some people are strikers, some people are defenders, some people are midfielders, and there's also the goalkeeper. Everyone is placed in the best position they can play, and they will put Cristiano Ronaldo in the goal as a goalkeeper. He won't be the best goalkeeper I have. Yes, he'll have the skills, but if you want him to perform at his best, you better put him in a forward role, in a starting forward role. And it's the same thing here. You have to think about this, and within context of your strengths and roles, think about the best roles for you in the organization. Now, having said this, you might be in an organization whereby they put you into a certain role and you're like, well, I can't change just yet. But they still, just because you're in this position right now, doesn't mean you can't change to another position within the organization or even create this own role for yourself. Sometimes you might have the opportunity to even come up and even create your own role that you define for yourself within your own organization. And I encourage you to take up this opportunity. And some of the things you might ask yourself as well is, what are my strengths and what has motivated me to contribute to my organization? So you might say, well, I like seeing my team work better and improve on their productivity. So maybe you might have some extensions that are like through VS Code, or you might have some design patterns that help them code much better, or you might have some just some ways to let them do work quicker. Now, that might be your strength. Or you might say, hey, I like teaching and I like teaching about different concepts. So I might host like a club or a book club to teach them about something every month. And that's something everyone could learn from. I won't tell you how to do this, but just using your strengths and use them, figure out what motivates you, that could allow you to put yourself in the best position to be. So just in the same analogy, if you're put in the best position, it will give you much higher chance of success. And yeah, just going back here. Some of the things that's are important to me and where I've had the most success is partnering with your manager. It's important that you have to notice the way I've said partner with your manager. So instead of thinking about it of a hierarchical relationship and thinking about, hey, he's my manager or boss and I report to him and subordinate, think of it as a partnership. So think about, hey, how are some of the things what are some of the things you can have with your manager, and how can you get him to where he or she wants to be and where you want to be. Some of the tips I give is whenever you have meetings with your manager, treat them as opportunities for feedback. So don't treat them as status updates. If you're doing a project with them and they want a status update, you can share that through other means. You can have that through email or Slack or in such other ways of communication. But when you have this time with them, ask them questions of like, some of the questions can be like, how do you think I'm tracking for this work? And do you think I'm on the right track for this promotion I desire? Are you able to help me with this ask? Is there anyone else I should speak on this team? Make them feel that when you make them feel that they're part of your mission and you're also helping them something, I assure you they'll be much more helpful to you and they'll want to see you win in your organization. So think of it as a partnership. If you help them, they help you, and both of you will get to where you want to be. It might even be a simple question of asking them what their goals and ambitions are. because they may have their own goals and ambitions, and if you find common ground, it's a win-win for everyone in the situation. I have a couple of questions here that, let me just bring them up. Yes, how can we partner together to get me where I want to be in my career? Am I on track for the promotion I desire? What is in your feedback on what I have shared? So asking these questions and showing how engaged you are in your career track, on your growth, will keep your manager employed, and also, manager engaged, and also have questions for them. I guess what I'm trying to get with this is that a lot of times there's a lot of and something I've done in the past and a mistake of mine. I assume that the manager knows how I'm feeling and knows what I want at the same time. And that's not always the case, because they're not the only person I'm managing. So they are managing other people as well. So it's important to always communicate, and even I would say over communicate your desires and wants, so that they're always on the same page. Yeah. And the final one, because you're almost coming up to time, is demonstrating leadership. So you might always, let's say you started just a junior position or something, not even senior, and you're in a position and be like, hey, how do I demonstrate leadership? Because I'm not a leader. I don't have that title. I don't have lead in my role. I don't have manager in my, no one reports to me. I'm just an individual contributor. And I want to tell you that there are many other ways you can contribute. You don't have to, you don't have to wait for opportunity to lead, not to be a lead. You can, in your own space and um, in your own work, you can demonstrate leadership. So I can give you a couple of personal examples. Like for me personally, I don't have a leadership title in my organization. No one reports into me. There's no one, I'm just working as an individual contributor. But some of the things I've done in the organization so far are like, I have a book club that I manage that gathers once a month to talk about things technical. We choose a topic, I run the meeting, get different feedback of what hasn't worked, what do you like, what don't you like about the topic, and then I write down all the feedback and share with everyone. And through this, I've also gathered feedback from this book club, and people have been telling me that actually this has allowed them, to learn about new things and force them to learn about different things that they hadn't thought of and implemented during their day-to-day work. Some other things as well is participating in the diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring efforts in my organization. It's something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about hiring more engineers from underrepresented backgrounds, and I've been driving those efforts, doing referrals, reviewing resumes, and just helping people to get that access to Atlassian and also improve their livelihoods as well. So those are some of the ways I've demonstrated leadership without actually having leadership title. Because you have to always remember that this aspect of leadership it's something that it could be given to you or something, but the people who have really demonstrated leadership are those who are followed. And once you have a story and your own brand, you'll definitely be on the right track. And yeah, we're almost coming up to time. So just want to give a wrap up of all the things that you have learned today so far. I know this has been quick and I've gone through a couple of things immediately, but some of the things I wanted to give out to you is whichever organization you're with, no matter the size, always have a think about what your superpowers are, and superpowers could be strengths. What are things you like on working, and how can you incorporate that more in your day to day, because it will get you where you want to be. Speak to your managers as much as you can. Communications managers are not status updates, but more feedback on the work that you've shared. Always communicate with them the ideas you have and the goals you have for your future within your organization. And yeah, one of the things I want to communicate to everyone here and whoever watch this video later is that you are enough. So I want to let you know that you are all enough in this organization. You as a stand there, you are enough, and you don't have you might have these feelings of inadequacy or imposter syndrome, as they call this, or why am I here and everyone is faster or smarter or knows everything more than me. Yes, that might be for the case, but you have to remember that they just didn't come into the organization and they knew everything. They may have been there longer than you have been, and they've also figured it out as well. So take the time to appreciate you for who you are and build on those strengths and work on yourself. And trust me on that, as you work on yourself, you definitely get to where you want to be. Yeah, so some of the takeaways from this, I would say, is once again, you might say, how do I figure out my strengths and weaknesses? How do I figure out what's going on? Ask your friends, family, work colleagues these two questions. What am I good at, and what do you come to me for advice for? Then what's the one thing you'd come to me for, even if I was the last person in the world? Now you pick up you pick up a couple of themes. And I know some of these questions are hard. I may not want to know the truth, but you'll be a much better person for it. And you might even find out things about yourself that maybe you hadn't even appreciated or you might have known. As an example, my partner said that I have one of the good things she likes for me is that that I care for people and I'm always planning and I'm always thinking about including everyone in a conversation. And I've found that that's actually a strength I have. And when I'm having meetings or speaking to different people in my organization, I always make sure that even if there's some people are quiet on the Zoom call or conference call or even a meeting, I make sure their voices are heard and I make sure they also have an opinion and have something to say. So that's something that I've leaned into and something I enjoy doing. Yeah, maybe if someone could share in the chat like what their takeaways were from this event, or maybe they could raise their hand if they want to say something, and then I can yeah, and can share just what your takeaways were from this event, and we'll move ahead from there. Are there any takers for that, or will I assume that everyone has understood and they know what their action items are for the day? Thanks. Thanks, Akiro. You say, I hope I'm spelling this correctly. Sorry, I hope I'm saying this correct. Akiro says, my takeaway, you are enough. Absolutely, something I tell to everyone that everyone I know that you have to let yourself know you are enough. You bring your unique sets and skills and your experiences to an organization, and there's a reason why they have hired you. So always be present, and whatever feelings you always have of inadequacy or you're not contributing enough, you always contribute and you are enough. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I guess we'll move to Q&A. So if there are any questions or any comments anyone had on this. Oh, and before I move that, yeah. Someone with the hand on Laxman said how to know yourself, how to achieve plans for future goals and aspirations, and create a role for yourself are my takeaways. Yeah, absolutely. It's something it's something I've only realized even until recently. And I've been more intentional of is that even when I come in an organization and they hire me for a specific role, it doesn't mean that I can only do this specific role for the rest of the time I'm there. You can wake up and say, well, what are the roles I see in the organization that I see myself doing? And you can define those roles for yourself. So you can make a business case action and say, well, this is how I see myself giving more value. This is why I see doing different things. So you might come in as an engineer, software engineer, and say, well, I like security and I want to work more in security. Or I want to be an evangelist for the organization and speak more about the product. And you decide to move more towards the product side. So always think about it's never static, have that growth mindset, and to definitely take you far. And yeah, before we go, are there any Q&A, any questions, anything anyone want to know about me or know about how I came up with this? Yes, what's your take? What's your take on remote work and teamwork? Yeah, so the way I think about this, I've been doing remote work for about since 2017, so it's about 5 years. This was pre-COVID, and before pre-COVID, pre-COVID, it was more like you'd have, I was working remotely, but the rest of my team was always in office. I always found that there was always like a slight disconnect between when I was trying to work with people who are in office, but now with everyone with remote work, everyone is kind of, how do I say, yeah, everyone's remote. So the challenge here is that how do you keep everyone engaged and feel like they have a sense of accomplishment in the work that they do? that's something a lot of organizations are trying to work on. Some of the things I do struggle with is focus. Like we have all these messaging apps and emails and notifications. So as software engineers who assume we're here, trying to actually do some deep work and focus is not as easy as it was in the pre-COVID and pre-remote work. Some of the recommendations I'd say is having dedicated blocks of time just to say, hey, these are things that I want to work on, and this is the time I'm going to work on, and no other distractions. Definitely for teamwork within the organization, the teams, it really depends. So some of the things you might think about is having like Zoom windows where everyone can join in and work together, or pair programming as well has been helpful. So I guess it says that there's also the thought of async communication, because everyone is sending messages and maybe you don't have to reply at the same time. So it's something to think about. But I'm part of remote world, and I think this is how it's going to be for the long term. I don't believe that there'll be a change back to everyone in the office. I think companies are starting to see a world where there's a mixture of both, and that's the new world we'll have to face. It has its advantages and disadvantages. Advantages, you might get ability to work from places you've never worked before. So if you, for example, want to go on a holiday and maybe you can work in that location and also go on holiday in that location. It does have its disadvantages. You might not feel as connected to your team as before. So yeah, it's a give and take in this process, but like all things, it's changed. So being open to it, and once again, looking at your strengths and how you can lead into those strengths will get you where you want to be. Thank you for your question, Akido. Any other questions? Laxman, Anand, Patty, do you have any questions? Yeah, oh, that's fine. How can a web dev transit into software security? Yeah, like transition to software security, that's something you can easily do. Like what I'll tell you is that a majority of all the software security work is on web applications, because majority of the apps on the web. So as long as front facing as web applications, so that's something you could do. What I recommend is looking at things like I could send you links later, like Pentester Academy or Burp Suite. I'll just add them to the conversation. But what I would recommend is also looking at the OWASP top 10. If you're looking for some more like a roadmap or path, reach out to me through LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to share with you more resources for that. But yeah, thank you for the question. And oh, one thing I'll add is as a web dev, you have that background in software engineering. Once you move to software security, you have a more appreciation for the security and the stuff you find. So you pretty much be set up for success from the get-go. Okay, and a time check. We have room for one. Oh yeah. How often do you talk to them? Yeah. Thanks, Anand, for that question. What's your take on mentors? How you want mentors to be? How often do you talk to them? I have a couple of mentors. I've always found them useful. Having said that, mentors can have different roles in your career progression. There are some mentors you find who might only be available for a particular amount of time. So maybe you're working on a specific problem or have a particular challenge, and then they'll help you in that direction. You might have people who are advisors, so they can advise you on the next step you want to be. Then there's even a concept of sponsors. So sponsors are people in the organization who speak for you on behalf in rooms that you're not part of. So maybe there might be this exciting project that they might say, oh, we think Anand should be part of this project, and they'll speak on your behalf. I think mentors are really helpful for this. One thing I'd always say is that don't think of the mentorship as a one-way relationship whereby they're always giving you advice, but always think how can you also improve their livelihood and how can you add value to their life as well. So and it's a give and take process. Like maybe you won't gel with all the mentors, but that's fine. Like not every relationship will be a perfect fit, but once you find those that work for you, build them out, and also think there can be a contribution for them. In terms of talking to them, I talk to them, I'd say roughly once a month. So but then that really depends. Like right now, I've really been busy and doing a lot of things, so we haven't really kept in touch. But then if you can maintain a cadence of bi-weekly or every 2 weeks or once a month, that's really up to you. So the idea is always come to something and always keep them engaged in what you're doing, and you'll be successful in your mentorship. One thing, any inputs from new managers who are getting transition from developer role? Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question, Laxman. What I'll say is this: as a new manager, you have to think about this as a new skill, right? Like you're starting like level 0. So yes, you have these ideas of a developer role and how things should be, but be open to that. So once you come for that mindset of, and you have to think about how you be managed or your inputs. So the success of you as a manager is the success of those people who report to you. When they're successful, it is you successful. Whereas before the developer, your success was depending on your input or your code or your practice, where here it's now you sort of have to hand over control and hand over the reins to other people and and motivate them or get them to where they need to be. So have that mindset of, some people call it servant leadership. So how you can be of service to those people are reporting to you. And that's the way you get them to be you. Be empathetic as much as you can and tell stories, because I've found that once you have that level of understanding, then they'll want to work for you and they'll want to do things for you. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, also speak to other managers in your organization. If there are managers whom everyone thinks are good managers, ask them for tips and advice, and they'll help you. But it's, yeah, transitioning is not easy and it's tough. And to give you an idea, maybe you might realize that actually I don't want transition and I like being more of an individual contributor. So maybe you can go back to the individual contributor role. But if you think that being a manager is something that excites you and motivating other people and just being a vessel for them to get that job done, then yeah, by all means, we need more good managers in this world, I say. Thank you for that question. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to mention, last one question was, any inputs for new managers who are getting transition from developer roles? So, yeah. Thanks, Patty. Yeah, well, I guess that's about it. Really thank for everyone who's joined this conversation. It was my first talk as well with Codementor. So hopefully I'll be back next time and more polished and more yeah, but how will you address Web3 security? I don't know. Web3 security is something everyone's still working on. Hey, depends on whatever category, but yeah, it's an interesting space. So maybe we can talk about it next time. So yeah, thank you and take care, everyone. See ya.